Hey everybody, we got some new Monster Hunter Wilds videos that just came out today. They said that they will be releasing new weapon showcase videos every day until the next trailer. I'm not gonna make a video covering every single one. I'm not gonna do breakdowns. Other YouTubers can do that. I really love this insane gameplay that they're showing off. Like walking and grabbing herbs. It's great. So now we know definitively how tracking is going to work in this game. Yes, there are scout flies that we're following. Yes, the map tells you where the monster is, and your mount will literally just run to the monster. So you're basically just being brought to the monster, and these things are fine for me. I have been critical of the hunting tracking systems in Monster Hunter since the beginning, because although we like to fondly remember the original old school system of using paintballs and not knowing where the monster is on the map, truthfully the system gets stale very fast, because at the end of the day all you're doing is running to the spawn point of the monster, or you're running to the location the monster would move next after it, appeared at that spawn point and it moved zones. And that's how it's always been, and that would basically be how it would be in the future. So showing you where it is on the map doesn't really change the fact that you probably already knew where it was on the map. The good news is in this game, your first encounter with the monster, it actually you will be required to do some form of tracking. It's just subsequent times you go and hunt the same monster again, it'll just tell you where it is on the map, which makes sense because you found its spawn point, so obviously it's going to spawn in the same places that it did before. And that's fine because that's how we've always played Monster Hunter. So what was needed was some kind of revolution on how the monsters spawn, or what happens at monster spawn, that would shake up the system. And as we saw with sort of pack system with the Doshiguma or the Balahara, clearly some monsters will have packs, and that will mean that just simply running to the spawn point of the monster isn't always going to be advantageous. I think that's a way of organically making the concept of fantasy hunting feel lively and real, like you're in a real environment, while not taking away from the truth that this is still a video game and there's a bit of an arcadey nature to what happens in that video game. So ultimately, I think that the way that they're going about it is fine. I think that there are worse ways they could have done it. I think if they just went full-blown how Rise did it, I'd be pretty disappointed. Overall, I'm not going to be I'm not upset there's no paintballs or anything like that, and that's something we kind of already knew was going to happen. So as mentioned earlier, they also showcased focus mode in a bit more detail, way more detail. They actually broke down how focus mode works. I shouldn't need to have to explain it because the video does a really great job of explaining it. I said it before and I'm going to say it again, I am not going to use focus mode, or I will rarely use focus mode unless it is absolutely necessary, and that's just because of how I play Monster Hunter. I'm way too used to Monster Hunter's gameplay and the way that the camera is and player positioning and the positioning your weapon, that having another sort of mode where you can control the camera but your hunter is always facing where your camera is positioned, it just feels too different for me, and I would have to learn that system, and me personally, I just don't really want to. I don't really care for it. I think it's cool that they're adding this in, and I think for some players, especially speedrunners, they might find a lot of use out of this. Even new players will probably use this a lot because I can see the value of this system. Me personally, I just don't care for it, and that's okay. I'm just gonna rely on the tried and true mechanics of just always being on top of my camera, the position of my hunter, and the position of the monster. I mean, this is how I've always played Monster Hunter. I don't need a new system. It's fine. Some of the new attacks are interesting though, and as I said before, I just hope that those new attacks aren't just they don't become the meta, that they are on average the most powerful. They have the highest DPS, or they have the highest motion values, and it's just more efficient to constantly use them. I don't really want to do that. The other kind of reason why I actually don't want to touch this system is pretty simple. It's just that I, frankly, don't like the constant visual clutter of the scout flies, and I wanted to talk about scout flies. So I didn't like scout flies because of how intrusive they sort of were visually on the camera. You're just constantly seeing these little dots, and something I really didn't like about them was how it wasn't always clear from a depth perception perspective, like if the scout fly is close to you or farther away from you. It wasn't a huge issue, but it was enough for me to sort of just be bothered by it. I know I'm not alone on that. There's many players sort of felt that it was unnecessary. I still think this is unnecessary, especially if you're just gonna ride your mount and the mount is just gonna be, you could just say the mount is following the scent of the monster and it's running to the monster, and that would be fine. But it's the fact that we have this visual clutter of this waypoint that it's also following. I don't really know if that's necessary. On top of that, I mean, the game is just going to tell you where the monster is going to spawn anyway, so you really don't need the scout flies at all. But I get it from a world building point of view. It's sort of a lore thing that the hunters use the scout flies, and it's also an aesthetic thing that helps to make Monster Hunter visually distinct, maybe from other action games. But I personally, if I'm able to turn off scout flies, I will, and that's just because I don't want the extra visual clutter. I don't like them scattering around items. I don't like them scattering around weak points on the monster. I don't think that's necessary either. I think these monsters, especially the Chatacabra, he's pretty brightly colored, and the lighting is very good. It's very easy to see the injury, and I like the injury system. I think this is a neat system. It's very clear where the weak spot is, so I don't need to have scout flies gather around the weak point. I can assume what the weak points are. So again, this is just another reason why I'm not going to use it, just because I don't need the weak points to glow for me, and that's fine. Some players will probably enjoy that, and that's okay, but it's not really necessary for me, and I'm sure that there's a lot of people who will agree with me there. Otherwise, everything that they're showing is pretty fantastic. It's great to actually see like a proper sort of quest being carried out, and I'm excited to see what Trailer 3 is going to be. The map in the lower corner is very interesting. I like how it's sort of this like 3D sort of system. Like from gameplay perspective, this makes perfect sense. From a like lore perspective, like there's no way that these hunters have like a 3D digital map. And so it's sort of odd to have such a detailed and technical, highly advanced mapping system be present in a game that's meant to be very aesthetically archaic. It feels a little bit odd, but I understand from a gameplay point of view that this is probably just necessary, and this was needed for the future of this franchise, especially with how big these maps are. And these maps do look pretty big and expansive just from what we've seen from these couple of visual shots here. I'm excited to see the other weapon showcases as well. I think that I'm really excited to see how Longsword looks, because allegedly Longsword plays very differently. Also, the sound effects, like when you're hitting the monsters, they sound really good. They sound a lot better than how they sounded in Monster Hunter World and Rise. So I'm hoping that the blood effects are increased in the final delivery of the game, because I know they play it down in these trailers, but I hope that there's more blood effects, and so that you can really feel like you're actually hurting the monster. And again, I'm excited to play this. This is the most excited I've been for a Monster Hunter game since Monster Hunter 4, so we'll see. Alright, I'll make another video when the next big trailer comes out, but until then, see ya. Bye.